brainstorm.
Today's episode is brought to you by the self-help book everyone's talking about. Today is Now by Dr. Samuel Benjamin of the Institute for Eclectic Modality Therapy in New York. Dr. Benjamin is a recognized pioneer in alternative short-duration therapy with long-lasting benefits. It's available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle on Amazon. So stop waiting for tomorrow, won't you? Today is Now. Dr. Geller.
Colonel Troyer, welcome. Episode 12.
Fantastic.
Unbelievable. We flew through this season.
We sure did. Where are some of the places that people listened to us from last week?
So we have a couple of new places, and that was an unintended lead-in to the first place I'll mention, which is hello to Newberry, South Carolina. South Carolina, 43 miles northwest of Columbia. I looked it up. So that's where Newberry, South Carolina is.
Seems like a lovely part of the world. Okay, Newberry. Welcome, Newberry, South Carolina.
Great to have you. Also want to say hello to Tuttle, Oklahoma.
Great name.
Tuttle, population 7,000.
Hi, Tuttle.
We're slowly making a dent in that population percentage-wise.
As always, use our email, which is still the one from last season, killershipwrecks@gmail.com. I'm curious to know how the folks from Tuttle found.
Let's also say hello to Nanaimo, British Columbia. This is all the way up there north in Vancouver Island.
So cool.
So anyways, that's this week, where we have at least two, possibly more, but at least two listeners in each of those places. So super excited to say hello to everybody. So any housekeeping items this week? Did you have a chance to look at the emails or anything we need to deal with? Complaints?
I did.
Are we doing anything wrong?
The only complaint may be mine, but I'll get to that in a minute. We did get one email pointing out, I guess, that we may have given the impression, and by given the impression, I mean flatly stated, that the author of Cleopatra had won a Pulitzer Prize for that book.
I see where this is going.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the book.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the book, which I am not only looking at, but I'm currently reading and really enjoying. I recommend. It's Cleopatra by Stacy Schiff. But they pull that old bait and switch thing, where it's like Cleopatra by Stacy Schiff, and then it says winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Well, Stacy won for a different book, no offense. So
yeah, that's like one of those punctuation things. Like, wait a second, that comma means what? You didn't write it?
Yeah.
Apologies. We didn't do it intentionally. We weren't trying to hype the book by, implying that the author won a Pulitzer for that book, even though we did imply the author won a Pulitzer for that book.
You'll recall I took some heat a couple weeks ago for, maybe dwelling too long on the question of the physical appearance of Cleopatra.
Right, and that doesn't include what was edited out. So a significant portion of the episode. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, very emphatically stating your position.
Thank you. This is our fourth straight season without any active, current litigation against us. So you'll recall I got in trouble and, maybe talked a little bit too much about, was she cute? Was she not cute? Was she an 8? Was she a 3? Yeah. Okay. So I just want to point out that same issue is in the culture right now. Were you aware of this?
I was not. I've not been reading.
Netflix has some show that involves Cleopatra, and I guess audiences, whatever their opinions were of the show overall, there was a specific sort of critique, or
like that, not as good as the pod.
Exactly.
I knew it.
And no, that people found fault with just the look of Cleopatra on that show.
Interesting. That became a controversial issue.
Yeah. It was an issue like, is this really what she looked like? And this person looks like too modern. And so then, I don't know
Did anyone have your position?
No.
Okay.
The archaeologists or scientists or whoever would do this came up, they got interested in it, and they came up with their best reconstruction of what she actually probably did look like.
Like using technology?
Yeah.
Okay.
And science.
Yeah,
And
sure.
and I will say it's kind of interesting if you look at the two next to each other, because one does look, the one by the scientist does have a more historical feel.
Right.
And, I would say, like, at the risk of getting in trouble.
Don't put a scale. Don't say 0 to 10. We're good. Let's end the season without any litigation. What do we want to get bad press for? Well, your point's well taken. And so I think that let's maybe leave it there, or unless you have something very uncontroversial to say about her looks. I don't know. This all makes me very nervous. So maybe we put that aside for now.
So thank you very much for your intervention. That was, I'm not saying that is what I was about to say. Other bit of housekeeping. I don't know whether it's you or Lizzie or the both of you, or maybe just some rival podcaster trying to mess with us. We did get an email from the National Labor Relations Board.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good. What did we not file?
Notifying us that somebody at our organization has expressed interest in unionizing.
Okay, so there's a 33% chance it's you, right? And
Well,
there's
definitely not me.
Well, I mean, this is not a large organization, right? I'm implying, like, so is Lizzie's is this like going to be like a Sally Field show? Like, what's going to happen here?
And no offense, but it's not like Lizzie's working crazy hours.
No, I mean, we got to pay her a union wage.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which I'm pro-union, but I
love unions.
Yeah.
This seems like a union of one, and I'm not that kind. I mean, doesn't union imply two?
It just, to me, it connotes some, leaning on the shovels, that kind of thing. We're trying to get a podcast out.
Let's vote it down and move on. Okay. Because I don't think it's worth our time.
I hope honestly. It is as simple as that, but I just wanted to put that on your radar.
I'm going to put it in the denial box for today.
Okay. But double back, if you're the next one to talk to Lizzie, ask about that. Because
I will absolutely find out
if that's a prank.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully it's a prank.
Let's get into it, buddy.
Yeah, here we go. It's episode 12. This is the final biography of Killer Biographies season, right? We do 12 episodes. Some debate over whether we will do another season of Killer Biographies or perhaps Killer Inventions, like we've mentioned. So stay tuned on that. We'll keep everybody updated. All right, today for the final biography, I must say, and maybe this is some cliche where your most recent biography is always your favorite biography. I will say I think this is my favorite biography.
It's not better than Margaret Rudkin.
Again, I don't want to turn this into a competition. This is not killer competition, but what I will say is unbelievable, but also someone that everyone should know about. Okay, so today let's start by letting everyone know that this biography is about someone who is connected to both Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison. Now, those are two inventors I'm sure you're familiar with.
I am.
And what were those two inventions you would associate top of mind with Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison?
Well, with Bell, I'm going to go telephone.
Yeah. Now, what about Thomas Edison? What comes to mind?
I would go with, I can never remember. Is it electricity itself, or is it just the light bulb? Or
it's
what
the
is
light bulb. That's probably his most famous. But yeah, electric lighting. Okay. Those two guys are very well known. What's not as well known is that an inventor and draftsman named Lewis Howard Latimer is connected to both of those guys.
I don't even know that name, but he had a big part in both of those.
So he has a huge part in a lot of inventions, but specifically his expertise as leveraged by Alexander Graham Bell in his race to file a patent on his telephone invention, and then in improving on Edison's original light bulb. Lewis Howard Latimer is really one of the most famous inventors you've never heard of.
How did he get shut out?
I'm going to tell you his story. You're not going to believe it. Let's set a little context for the family that Lewis Howard Latimer was born into. So 6 years before Lewis was born, his parents were slaves in Virginia.
Oh, Lord. Oh, no.
They managed to escape primarily because his father was somewhat light complexion, and he posed as a plantation owner and brought his darker-skinned wife, Rebecca, along with him as his slave.
Crafty.
crafty. And you got to imagine like some of the conversations like, hey, can you help with dinner? I'm not your slave. Well, technically, like if we're going to role play this out, you're my slave. But I don't think there were probably moments of levity. I think they were just racing for their lives.
Yeah. But nobody's here right now. I know it's just good to, for us to practice.
Stay in character.
Yeah. But we reached freedom like a year and a half ago. I know, but it's just like
I'm not good with a compass. Can you go fetch more of that porch? Okay. So shortly after arriving in Massachusetts, which is where they escaped to, George, the dad, was recognized and jailed. And his story got a lot of attention, and he was actually defended by Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison.
Wow.
Two of maybe the most famous abolitionists.
Giants.
Yeah, it almost feels like, were there like 12 people in America? Like he's meeting like every famous person I've ever heard of from that time.
Yeah, if he bumped into Alexander the Great, I'm finally calling bullshit.
Wait until, no, just kidding. Through the support of Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, they found a local minister who put up the money to purchase George's freedom. So Rebecca and George started a family in Chelsea, Massachusetts.
Okay.
That brings us to the birth of Lewis Howard Latimer, born September 4th, 1848. Incidentally,
that's our hero.
That's a leap year. It's a leap year. It's the weirdest thing.
You just jumped in there. Like
that's a throwback to a different season for other listeners.
If I had that kind of agility and response time, I would have gotten my numerical rating of Cleopatra in before you cut me off.
That's true. Well, there's always editing. Anyways, that's a leap year. That's when Lewis was born, September 4th, 1848. He spent a lot of his childhood, younger years, helping his dad on the various odd jobs his dad did around town. However, when Lewis was 10, the Supreme Court made that famous Dred Scott ruling, which basically said individual slaves need to prove that they had the consent of their owner to legally become free. So they basically just threw out the Missouri Compromise. And George did not have any paperwork. George freaks out. And he says, well, I don't want this to impact my family. So he just takes off because he had nothing to prove that he was free from enslavement.
Wow.
So when his dad left, his mom had all these kids. I think that he had like 3 or 4 siblings. She split the family up for a while, and she sent Lewis and his brothers to a farm. Lewis went to school for grammar school just for a few years. That's the only formal education that he had in his life. And he was known at the time as an excellent student who loved to read and to draw. So he clearly had aptitude back then that wasn't fully developed because he wasn't, he didn't have access to schooling.
Yeah.
So Lewis, turning 16 in 1864, enlists in the Navy to fight in the Civil War. Problem was that although the minimum age for joining the military had been dropped from 18 to 17, he was just 16, like a week before. So he lied about his age and actually enlisted as a landsman on the USS Massasoit. I'm probably mispronouncing that.
As a 16-year-old.
As a 16-year-old, he was a landsman on the USS Massasoit and fought. Not clear if he actually was in any battles because it ended soon thereafter.
As a 16-year-old in 1864. What is a landsman?
He's called a landsman, and yet he serves on a boat. And so I did look that up because I was like, that makes zero sense.
Yeah. Or my thought was like, or are these guys who jump off the boat for the fight or something?
That'd be good. That's kind of a pirate type interpretation.
Sure.
What it actually derives from is the Royal Navy in the 18th century used the word landsman to refer to a seaman who had less than 1 year's experience at sea.
Oh.
So they turn into an ordinary seaman after they've been a landsman for a year.
I love it. We're doing what we do, we're informing people.
Yeah.
This is good, just good to know.
It's good knowledge, good fingertip. I think they call it knowledge. Like just pull it out of your like, oh, what? You know what a landsman is? Well, yeah, I looked it up.
And you never know when that could come up.
Well, I think if you play any online trivia, it will come up, especially if you play too much. So,
okay, 1864.
So 1864, he goes in. So he's honorably discharged from the Navy on July 3rd, 1865. So he's out of the military. And he's still, 17 or whatever. So
Right.
he gets a job as an office boy at a patent law firm, Crosby, Halstead, and Gold, with a $3 per week salary. So he's hired to, fetch things, do whatever is needed around the office.
Right.
Not a bad job, but not a lot of upward mobility. But he's an office guy. But of
Sure.
course, someone as inquisitive and with an aptitude like Lewis decided that he wanted to learn how to use all the tools that they were using. So he's hanging around the office. So he quickly learned how to use all the tools of the trade: T-squares, triangles, compasses, rulers. And he mastered the very difficult art of drawing to scale.
Fantastic.
It was incredibly important because all drawings at the time were done by hand and in ink. There was no way you could make a mistake.
Right.
You'd
There
have
was
to start
no
all over.
margin for error. Yeah.
Zero.
Wow.
And he's learning all of this to become a serious draftsman at this patent law firm.
Sounds like he's also one of those dudes who's like a sponge,
Yes.
just like picks stuff up very quickly, very active mind.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly why he became essentially like a Renaissance guy, because he could pick things up so quickly. So he played like 3 instruments. He had all of those abilities that are superior to the average person. Just like he's lucky. He was really amazing.
He's not super lucky. He's a black man in America in 1865.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, here come the lawsuits. All right, I'll edit that out. So he's learning the art of this mechanical drawing, and he's very good at it. And so after a few months of studying on his own, he requested from the partners an opportunity to show his abilities. Like he just went up to the partners of the firm, patent law firm, and asked if he could be considered for a role as a mechanical draftsman.
Fantastic.
Even though he had no formal training.
Sure, but by now they've seen his work and they've seen, how gifted he is. So
he was immediately offered a job as draftsman at $20 a week.
Wow.
So he was making $3.
Yeah.
And then they made him a draftsman. He started making $20.
Pays to ask.
Yep. And within a year, he was the chief draftsman of the patent law firm. And again, later when you have time, if you look at his drawings, they truly do look like art.
Works of art.
It's like, what?
Man.
Like, those aren't sketches.
Awesome.
Those are like paintings. Like, what do you do? That's incredible.
Where do you think those things are now? Are they?
We'll get there.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. But great question, because you'll really want to see them. Okay, so Latimer, as I said, he's reading the books, he's teaching himself this mechanical drawing, and he stays with this firm for almost 11 years. And during that time, he gets married to a woman named Mary Wilson, and that's in 1873.
Okay.
And they have 2 kids, 2 daughters. During this time in America, just to set the context, it's important, there was a spike in patent applications. With the Industrial Revolution in full swing, like a lot's going on. So the need to have these draftsmen was, huge. Everyone needed these guys to do the drawings to submit patents. Because
this is sort of like the age before the robber barons, when fortunes are going to start to get made.
Yes.
There's 20,000 other ideas that didn't, but they all had to get pictures drawn of them and patents pulled up. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Tons. And so his specific talents were very well matched to this post-Civil War period, because there were so many scientific and engineering breakthroughs, and they all needed to be documented by a draftsman.
Also, the country is, they're finally picking up the pieces from the Civil War, and sometimes there's like a little boom in the in activity and industry, and people sort of wanting to amass a fortune, or
Totally.
Okay.
And like you referenced before, he has this ability to become an expert in several different disciplines. So yes, he becomes this incredible draftsman, but he also was interested in scientific principles. And so he started leaning towards becoming an inventor and reading a ton and becoming almost like a scientist. So he was very fortunate because he could do his own drawings, obviously, when he'd have these ideas.
Yeah, and also, in a way, great experience to see the 10 billion patents coming across your desk. It's like, okay, I get an idea of what people are working on, what some of the ideas are that are current,
Exactly. You're catching like the themes of the day. What are people trying to do? Oh, they're trying to improve basic things. All right. So let's use science. And he was fortunate that he had the ability to grasp all these scientific principles, because it allowed him to actually do both, like to be a draftsman, but also to be an inventor.
Yeah.
So that leads to his first patent, which was issued in 1874. So he was 26. And what he invented was an improved, quote, water closet system on railroad cars.
Water closet meaning toilet?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is an improved system for toilets on railroad cars. Okay.
I wonder what the improvement was. Like they cut a hole in the bottom of the bucket so that as the train goes, it just drops.
Pretty much. You will definitely agree that Latimer's description of his closed bottom hopper, okay, that's what he invented, the closed bottom hopper. I like the bottom liner. Like, I think that's a better word, or better marketing term.
Yeah. I mean,
liner.
if you're doing an infomercial, it's a lot easier to sell the bottom liner.
Let me just say, in the patent, he describes...
Because the bottom hopper sounds like something's going to like hop on your bottom.
It does sound like a frog or bunnies underneath that could come a hopping.
At best.
At best. So,
like a snake.
So Latimer's closed bottom hopper, obviously preferable to the open bottom hopper that was in use at the time. So again, sort of one of those like, well, obviously we need an improvement here.
Yeah, I would not describe that as rocket science, seeing that we need to close it. But
I said science, right? I didn't qualify it by saying Latimer was a rocket scientist. That comes much later. Anyways, dealing with what was available at the time, he describes the problem in this manner, quote, the draft through the hopper being always excessive, while the annoyance from dust, cinders, and other matters thrown up from the track is so great as to forbid or discourage the use, except under extreme circumstances. Our invention has reference to such a construction of a water closet apparatus for railway cars, as shall obviate the objections to the use of such closets as they are now built or applied. In our invention, we apply to the hopper a pivoted bottom that is automatically closed by the raising of the seat cover and automatically opened by the closing of the said cover. This bottom being pivoted at its center as soon as to be rotated 100 goes on to describe exactly how this thing's going to work.
I mean, so much going on here. That sounds like prior to his invention, it was pretty exciting when you sat down to do your business. Like, you didn't know what.
I thought you were going to say next he invented like the 2 tin cans and a string. Like, okay, what? He put a little lid on a toilet seat.
No, I'm just reflecting on how terrifying that would be to sit down to poop and cinders, rocks, or whatever else might come shooting back up. So that is the first thing that it's stunning to me that's what the closed, his
closed bottom hopper
was the closing of it. I thought it was going to be closing the top, like to keep stuff from sloshing around.
Well, it's both. He has again. Look at the drawings. It's incredible.
Okay. Sweet.
Okay, so after that, in 1876, it's very obvious to the people in that field who Latimer is in terms of his drafting abilities. Because again, they look like works of art.
For sure.
So he is hired by Alexander Graham Bell, who is working on his invention of the telephone. Bell is in a race to get a patent design before someone else turns it into the patent office.
Oh, wow.
And he has actually a rival named Elisha Gray, who's working on the same invention at the same time.
Never heard of him.
That's the problem. Although he did, I looked it up, go on to invent the music synthesizer, which I still don't understand how that was happening. Like, was Devo around in 1876? Like,
yeah.
Who was he marketing it to?
I know, who's going to be able to answer this for us? My brother-in-law, David Ziccarelli, who is a pioneer in the field of music, audio, of computer aided music. I don't know. I can't even describe it.
I listened to one of his lectures and I still can't describe it either.
I mean, but he's brilliant. Anyway, he's going to be able to tell us how in the world it possibly makes sense that somebody was making meaningful progress on a synthesizer.
1880. Yeah. And famous for it. Like, I guess a lot of people know who he is. Okay, but so Bell has Latimer draw the patent drawings for the telephone. And Latimer's expertise as a scientist and as an inventor and as someone who had worked for 11 years in a patent law firm, no one better to do this highly important work.
Did your advanced research and preparation reveal like more about how Bell got his name and number? Or
No.
it probably just they worked in the same field.
Well, that's what it is. It's sort of like the tech industry. Everyone knows everybody. And back then,
especially with the patents and the fact that he's like the frickin' like Da Vinci of patent pictures. And you can imagine Bell being like, I need like the best guy on this. Somebody like, I want the picture. Like one day I want to be ridiculously wealthy and sitting in a ridiculous mansion, and I want a framed picture of some beautiful patent.
Yeah. I want everyone in the world to know who I am and not who the guy is who's about to make me the man I am.
Yeah. So, the funny thing is at the beginning, I was like, wait, so this guy had a big part in both those. And like, why don't we know his name?
I'm going to tell you.
I mean, you already told me his freaking parents were slaves.
Okay. There's more to it than that even. Okay. So Bell does have Latimer work on his telephone invention, and Latimer submits it literally 3 hours before Elisha Gray on February 14th, 76. And Bell's patent was officially filed literally just a few hours earlier than his rival because of Latimer, and he gave him full credit for that. These drawings are incredible. So the original patent drawings of the telephone were done by Latimer.
Well, not only that, it's a 3-hour difference. Can you imagine how close that other dude came to, Or what would really drive me crazy if it's like some dude some lower down guy in your office who's like, no, I'm going to deliver it. It's like, it'll get there, and then the guy goes
stopping for a pint and then
like
filing
a facial or whatever, and then Latimer's beat him to the punch.
Bell gets the patent, and Latimer goes on to then work for someone named Hiram Maxim, who in 1880 was the founder of U.S. Electric Lighting Company and essentially the big competitor to Thomas Edison's company.
Wait, now hold on. Is he already not a wealthy man, but at least, like
he's a high-paid draftsman?
Yeah.
Yeah, and his patents haven't made that much money. Like the water closet thing didn't work out. It didn't become commercial.
No, but after the phone thing.
Yeah, well, again, he only did the drawings. So he, gets great jobs doing those drawings. But his inventions...
He's a hired gun.
Yeah. So he's still trying to do inventions. That's his new thing, not just to be a draftsman.
So he doesn't get a piece of the action.
Not yet. So then he goes to work for Hiram Maxim, U.S. Electric Lighting Company, fierce competitor to Edison.
Oh.
And of course, Latimer becomes an expert in electrical lighting. Very quickly.
But at that point, he's Team Hiram. How does he switch over to Edison?
It's a great foreshadowing of what's coming.
Okay.
But so while he's with Hiram Maxim, he's learning as much as he can about light bulbs. And he actually decides that the light bulb could be vastly improved because Edison's light bulb did not last very long.
Oh.
And so he kept looking at improving the paper filament of the Edison light bulb.
Interesting.
And he came up with
the light bulb. So there already was a light bulb.
Yes. Edison did invent the light bulb.
Okay, I got you.
His light bulb included a paper filament, which did not last very long. So somewhat impractical. What Latimer did was figured out that you could create a carbon filament. And so he filed a patent on the carbon filament, which would dramatically improve Edison's original light bulb.
So good.
And make it a lot more affordable. And so
I hope Edison eventually has to buy this patent from him for a handsome price.
Yeah, you would think. Because guess what he did next?
What?
He filed another patent for the process of manufacturing the carbons.
Okay. Beautiful.
Which was an improvement on the current method for producing carbon filaments. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
It reduced breakage. Like it had all these benefits that like no one had dealt with.
Also, I was not much for science generally, but I mean, it just sounds like a big jump in the technology from paper filament to carbon filament.
Yeah, it's like state the obvious. Dude, paper burns. What are you doing? Like, it's never going to last more than 3. Oh, geez, I just have to read that chapter. I got 4 words in. Like, I got to replace the light bulb. It's ridiculous. But that is the case with a lot of early inventions. And in fact, in defense of nearly everyone in the world, including myself until this episode, who had not heard of Lewis Latimer, I will say that it's often the inventor who's associated with the very first patent gets all the credit as the inventor, even though it's always subsequent patents and the improvements that make the initial idea like accessible. Or there's a lot that happens after that first patent.
For sure. I mean, it's a little bit like when you really dig into some of the stories of these Nobel Prizes, you're like, okay, well then why didn't so-and-so get it, just because she's a woman or,
Right. So Lewis, while he's working and learning all about, electric lighting, he actually starts to go out into the field and install incandescent lighting outdoors in New York and Philadelphia. And later they send him to Montreal. He says at the time, quote, "I had qualified myself to take charge of producing the carbons for the lamps when I was not drawing, and worked through the day helping to make the lamps, and at night locating them in stores and offices." So he was installing them and drawing them and producing the carbons. So he put in the first outdoor lighting system in Montreal. At night, this is Lewis Latimer, at night he was obsessed with learning French. At the time, he said his days were, quote, "spent climbing telegraph poles and locating arc lamps on them with the assistance of my laborers, who seemed much impressed with my effort to speak their native language."
Yeah, I was going to say, so he's basically up there stringing lights at about 430 different ice hockey rinks in Montreal.
Exactly.
That is so cool. I hope this guy winds up, at somewhat wealthy. Don't tell me it's not a sad, heartbreaking story.
No, I'm not saying anything. You got to listen to the show.
No.
His last assignment for U.S. Electric Lighting, he'd been there a long time,
Right.
Was to advise a company in England and set up a lamp factory there. So they sent him to England in 1882.
Which is kind of inconvenient. It's like, okay, I just learned all this French.
Yeah. So what do they speak there? Oh,
Yeah,
English? All right, whatever. I'll do it.
Yeah.
And, his mentor, which is this guy, Hiram Maxim, had actually stepped away from the electric lighting business and became obsessed with his new development, which was the machine gun. And that actually made him famous. So he's famous for the machine gun, not for the U.S. Electric Lighting Company.
Boy, if you're a descendant of that guy, you don't brag about that one as much.
No, that's a rough one. While they were in London, Latimer's wife notes in her diary, quote, "Lou is making a fine drawing of an invention of his or some improvement in elevators, and we'll see if he can get a patent on it. I hope it will be a success. He deserves to be successful, for he works and studies all the time."
Oh, she knows the man.
Yeah, he did get the patent. And just like the bathroom on the train, this was...
They decided to put a bottom layer on the elevator as well?
Yeah, pretty much. Like to keep people from falling into the shaft. It's like, let's go with state the obvious. Okay, well, we need that. Well, I'm going to file a patent. But that's so obvious. Well, no one's filed a patent. And he actually did share that with Otis Elevators, and they adopted that.
Of course they did. The word has gone out by now. Like, okay, if you want to make a lot of money, get this guy in at the beginning, pay him whatever his rate is.
He also was issued a patent for a hat rack system that locked hats, coats, and umbrellas. And it was used in restaurants and theaters and offices. Now if you look at the drawing,
weird.
It's so weird, but it's like you put your hat down and it locks it. So no one can walk off with your hat.
Okay.
It's very specific to the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there really such a massive... obviously there was, or our guy wouldn't have invented something to address it.
Okay.
But it just
my point is, if you put the artwork from that patent up on your wall, that's cool.
That's very cool on your wall. But let's just say Edison and Bell weren't clamoring to get involved with the hat lock.
Niche market.
Mechanism.
Niche market. Yeah. How much are those? They're very expensive to produce. Okay. Hey, we have to pay the bills here. Let's do a quick break, because when I come back, I'll tell you the rest of the story, which I will tease is not a sad story.
Fantastic. And I'm loving it so far. And this is our wheelhouse, shining a light on somebody we ought to know about. Okay.
All right, let's hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Sounds good. Have you spent years in therapy with only modest results? We have the book for you. Today is Now by Dr. Samuel Benjamin. Available in all formats on Amazon, the book gives you a roadmap to a happier, more confident you. So why wait for tomorrow? Today is now.
All right.
Okay.
So Lewis returns to the U.S. in 1884 after being in London. And guess who hires him?
Well, I bet all these guys are going to want him back.
Who do you think wants him the most? Because what has he just become an expert in?
Oh, okay. Edison, of course.
Edison. So Edison convinced Lewis Latimer to move to New York and work directly with him at his Edison Electric Light Company.
Makes sense.
So they moved the family.
Remind me, is it Edison who has the famous lab that then burns up in a fire?
Outside the scope of this pod.
Okay. Anyway, that's a good story on its own, but we'll get into it next season, maybe. Okay.
So because of Lewis's deep knowledge of patents and electrical engineering. He was an indispensable partner to Edison.
Yeah.
And he promoted and defended the light bulb design. And so, as he said at the time, or someone wrote at the time, he achieved a respected professional position on the basis of his patent expertise, his encyclopedic knowledge of lamp design and manufacturing, his drafting skills, and his creative intelligence. So that's what was written about him as why Edison tapped him to sort of be his right-hand person.
Oh, yeah.
Edison was so impressed with Latimer's knowledge, he encouraged him to write the first book on electric lighting. He told Lewis that he wanted him to actually write a book that described the Edison incandescent lighting system.
Wow. So we're going to add one more, expertise in this guy's portfolio, like superb artist, superb inventor, and now he's going to write a book.
Yes. And in 1890, he literally wrote the book on electric lighting when he published Incandescent Electric Lighting, a practical description of the Edison system. And he published this book that was the first book that describes electrical lighting.
I mean, it doesn't, not to be rude, it doesn't sound like a page turner, but like... I mean,
I'm going to wait for the audiobook. Oh, shoot. That's not on audiobook? Not meant to be, right? But still, definitely like a foundational book, that's been published. Again, from Latimer's perspective, like someone's got to do it. Interestingly, quick side note, in 2020, Joe Biden was on a campaign stop at a community meeting in Kenosha, Wisconsin in September of 2020. And he said, quote, "A black man invented the light bulb, not a white guy named Edison." And everyone was like, what? And
it sounds like one of those like weird Trump digressions, or about like the windmills or like water pressure where you're like,
right.
Okay.
And someone's like, "Joe, we just said hit the lights. Like it's dark in here." And he's like, we don't need the tangent.
Yeah. It's one of those moments where you're like, okay, this is the 80 years talking.
Right. Well, so he says, quote, "People fear that which is different. We've got to, for example, why in God's name don't we teach history in history classes? A black man invented the light bulb, not a white guy named Edison." And so newscasters did have to qualify and say, well, Edison did invent the light bulb.
Yeah, but that makes me like Joe.
Yeah, I mean, he's just like, hey, that's not that you don't know the story.
Also, like incredibly random that he would know that or be thinking about it. Or
unbelievable.
But, I mean, I assume it's somebody on his staff.
Clearly had not heard our pod, right? Like that'd be impossible. You can't travel in time.
He can't travel in time. And
that we know of.
He wouldn't be awake by this part of the pod anyway.
So Latimer continued to work on his own inventions. In late 1880s, he registered a patent for what is now considered the first air conditioning system.
Oh my Lord.
It's called the grandfather of modern air conditioning. And the patent application, which again, I'll read from, because not only are his drawings incredible, his write-ups are incredible. So this was his description. "The object of my invention is to present a large evaporating surface for the purpose of cooling the air about or passing over it, or to charge the same with chemical agents such as carbolic acid, bromochloralum, DTD to destroy odors or germs of disease as may exist therein." I mean, this goes on and on. Like he in the drawings are the first disinfecting air conditioning system.
Okay, but also it did sound, some of those ingredients just sounded like incredibly carcinogenic. I'm not an oncologist, but
well, he wasn't like one of these like let's live forever guys. He's like, let's just do this and get it right, and you guys in 100 years will figure out that everything I'm suggesting will kill us within 5 years. It's like, but cool invention.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, this guy is okay. Does this
Lewis, do we need to vent this carbon dioxide, or does it just come right back into the room? Because I don't get where this air conditioner sits. Should we put it in the window?
Do the bottom hopper thing now, but for the air. This carbon dioxide is killing me, but I don't want to leave my hat.
Lewis, can you get my hat off this rack? What are those plants?
Venus flytrap.
On Yelp, it's like the Venus flytrap invention.
I'm trying to get out of here, but I'm stuck on your freaking hat rack.
Great invention, but not practical to carry around a 2-pound key. I just want my hat.
So, but does this one get some traction, the AC thing, or not as much?
No, because they're like a little too early. You know what I mean? They're very prototypes at the time. So it wasn't like you could just commercialize them right away because they weren't fully tested. You're just filing the patent. So it's not like people then just started mass producing them. Anyways, so he worked for the Edison Electric Company as his final sort of full-time job as Edison's trusted consultant. He retired in 1911. but he remained a consultant to Edison and the company and served as an expert witness for years thereafter. And there's a lot on the correspondence between Latimer, who would send poetry to
Wait,
Edison.
the guy's writing poetry as well?
It's going to get crazy. I'm trying to get through this. The guy's so accomplished. It's like, guys, can you keep it to an hour? So he remains, very close to Edison. And in his retirement in 1918, he becomes a charter member and obviously the only person of color in a exclusive and very prestigious group known as the Edison Pioneers.
Wow.
It's just 28 white men, or 27 white men and Latimer. Don't accuse me of othering, but there just weren't women that were part of the Edison Pioneers.
Feels like othering.
The Pioneers were business or technical affiliates directly associated with Edison, and they played like the most significant part in the development of what is now the electric utility industry. Wow. Latimer's perspective at the time, being inducted as a charter member of the Pioneers, he said that I just want to lead by example and construct a social identity for African Americans.
Yeah, reminds me of old Shirley Chisholm saying, I'm going to do this, even if I'm not going to win, but just to kind of start the ball rolling.
He constantly had to prove himself because he had no formal training and no introductions to anything. He had to prove that he was capable of highly technical work, but he knew that his actions would speak louder than words. And he had such capability. It's like ridiculous. In one of the newspaper articles, someone wrote, quote, Latimer prevailed repeatedly, and the quality of his work, along with his quiet dignity and bright personality, kept him employed and highly respected. So he just had this reputation for being of super high integrity, but also supremely talented.
As annoying as it is that he didn't get the shake, that he didn't get the money or the attention that Edison and Bell got, there is some satisfaction in knowing that the top people in his field all recognized him as not just their equal, but in some respects maybe their superior.
You're totally right. They all revered him, and they're all quoted at the time, giving him the credit that he deserves. However, amongst African Americans, because again, he was gaining this notoriety, some were uncomfortable because they thought that African Americans could integrate better by taking small steps and that they'll do it over time. And Latimer preferred a different approach. And his perspective was that no, because you have to remember when this was. This is right after the Civil War. Right. He took the perspective that he's a full American citizen and I'm just going to conduct myself accordingly. And he said, I'll apply my talent to the opportunities that present themselves. And he said, quote, chose to position himself as an example to both races of what could be accomplished in a context of racial integration and unhesitating professional aspiration.
This guy's unbelievable. I mean, he's also a great writer. I mean, could have just been, run for president off a speech like that. But I mean, when he says, well, I did this because it's my right. And it's like, well, and also because you're a full-blown genius.
Right.
I mean, the guy is literally, but the guy's literally, clearly, one in a million.
Outside of his work as an inventor and draftsman, of which obviously he's most well.
What were his hobbies?
He was very religious. So he was a founding member of the Flushing, New York Unitarian Church. And he was active in the church. He also taught mechanical engineering, drawing, and English to new immigrants at the Henry Street Settlement House.
Oh, come on.
He did this in retirement.
Give me a break. This guy is like Saint Latimer.
He also remained extremely patriotic. He participated as an officer in the famed Civil War Veterans Organization, the Grand Army of the Republic.
Oh, my God. And I can barely get to the post office, Can you imagine him in a post office nowadays? He'd be like, okay, 50 inventions occurred to me just standing in line because A, this place runs so poorly, and B, I was in line for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I originally came to buy stamps. Now I want to file 7 patents. I need 7 envelopes. So let's go. Okay, so his health did begin to fail.
No.
After his wife, Mary, finally died in 1924. So his wife died when he was 76. His 2 daughters in 1925, which is his 77th birthday, they published a book of his poems. So here's his non-controversial poem called Friends. Friend of my childhood, of life's early days, when together we wandered through bright sunny ways. He's rhyming. Each true to the other, till full manhood came, and found the old friendship as ever the same. Came summer and winter, years waxed and waned, youth it had left us, but friendship remained. And now as with white locks I bend o'er life's page, the friend of my childhood is the friend of my age.
Okay, so he's not T.S. Eliot.
You're not
but,
a great poet. You're like, on the scale of, are you a Hallmark card or are you T.S. Eliot?
But at that point, he's successful enough that everybody's bought into the hype. So it's like, oh my God, have you got his new poem, like his new book of poetry? And he's just going over the numbers. He's like, why are people still buying the book on electricity, but nobody's getting the poems?
So on December 11th, 1928, at the age of 80, Lewis Howard Latimer died in New York.
80 years old. What an incredible life.
He always, stayed true to his roots. So he always lived in the same house, which is now a museum. And he stayed married to the same wife. Interestingly, one of his daughters, Emma Jeanette, she became the first Black person hired as a high school teacher in the New York City public school system.
Wow. But they had freaking AC in her room. But it might have been his janky old AC system that never caught fire.
Does anyone breathe what I'm breathing? Like, why do you think I have black lung? His grandson became an administrative law judge.
Yeah, those people are just...
they're one in a gazillion.
Well, it's a little bit of like the Da Vinci thing. Like, okay, so he was like the best painter and the best scientist and you're like...
You can't stop. And then you think, his parents had to run away because they were slaves and he didn't go to school. So he's self-taught and everything.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Genius like that is...
All right, so let me give you a few of his posthumous accolades or things about him. So the Smithsonian has a collection of incandescent light bulbs. Latimer's is featured prominently.
Okay, again, it's not the first thing I hit when I do the Smithsonian tour, but okay.
You're in the Air and Space Museum.
Yes, how did you know? I'm all about the Air and Space Museum.
A collection of his drawings from 1880 to 1885 is also in the Smithsonian's Department of Electricity and Modern Physics.
Okay, you know what would be cool? Because it was something I would buy just as a consumer is like a reasonable reproduction of those, something that's kind of like, because I bet some of those are beautiful. Do you think that maybe by now the times have caught up and we could just go out there and peddle that hat lock thing ourselves?
I thought about it as a summer opportunity, and then I remembered I'm too old for a summer job.
Like, could you put
it would be fun.
Ball caps in there, or it has to be like a fedora?
Totally. That's exactly what I was thinking. It was like everyone walks into a restaurant, it's like, dude, you got to take your hat off. Like, well, yeah, I don't want anyone walking with my trucker hat.
Yeah, I mean, some of those quote unquote trucker hats are, cost you $50 or something. I mean,
you're an attorney. Is that in the public domain? Can you and I just start mass producing tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be like one of those, like Steve Martin's, the eyeglasses in the Jerk, where it's like incredibly successful. And then, a couple years later, you're being sued for billions. Yeah. I feel like there's lots that could go wrong with that hat lock.
So he does have this collection of drawings at the Smithsonian's Department of Electricity and Modern Physics. Cool. He also is featured prominently at Edison's National Historic Site in West Orange, New Jersey. Now, again, it starts to make it sound like, how come we didn't know about this guy? But there is an inventors program at MIT named in his honor.
Oh, that's awesome. Just with his name, like the...
Oh, yeah, it's named after him. It's like the Latimer, whatever.
Cool.
He's also obviously an inductee into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for his specific improvement of the electric filament manufacturing techniques. PS 56 in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn.
I thought you were going to do the thing your mom does. P.S.
That is so getting edited. So PS 56 in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn is named the Lewis H. Latimer School.
I love that. Wait, which I'm going to look up where that is
it's
exactly.
It's in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. It says PS 56 is the Lewis H. Latimer School. And his family house was moved to become a museum. So it's by a park now, and it's turned into the Lewis H. Latimer House Museum.
Am I allowed to start singing your praises yet, or are you going to keep yammering
My last point, and then I can edit out the praise. The last point is maybe what I would consider the best description of him from one of the obituaries. So this appeared December 19th, 1928. And it just said, quote, his work in science was an achievement and his personal life was a work of art. And I felt like that captured him to a T because he achieved the highest levels in what he did. At a level that seriously is like Edison. And it's like he's at that level. And yet he did all this other stuff and he could also draw. It's incredible.
And he did it all as a black man when black people were just finally starting to get the beginning of, their personal rights, their human rights. I'm going to go back and look at some of the, unlike Latimer, I'm fundamentally pretty lazy. And so one of the things I haven't gotten to is like a lot of my kids' school books are just sitting around. I'm going to go look through some of the history texts and see, because they've always got the page with the picture of like Carver. He came up with, however many uses for peanut oil. We hear about Carver, like is Latimer in some of those books? I just didn't,
I don't
remember it.
ever hearing about him.
I've never heard about the guy, and he should get play because it's
incredible.
It's an African American narrative that we haven't heard. Somebody from that period who's also operating at the intersection of science, business, technological advancements.
Military.
Like
the guy joined the Navy to fight in the war when he's 16.
He helps, turbocharge the nation and the economy. I mean, all the things that can happen when light bulbs become affordable and prevalent, all the, increases in productivity and just quality of life. I mean, this guy.
And when you think of him installing the outdoor lighting system in Montreal and then at night learning French.
Dude, I guarantee you there was a hockey game down at the bottom of the pole going on the ice.
Don't get me started.
It's cold.
I knew you were going to bring it up, and I'm not going to go there.
And he's saying, "You kids aren't cold down there," and they're when the light just kind of flickers and then comes, the kids being like, "Oh my God! Like, can you have more of those? Like, can we get like 5 of those? Like, we could play all night."
Right.
Yeah,
insane. So his story is incredible, but it's also just the type of person.
Did they ever make it into like a TV show or a
there's
movie
been like a
or some
documentary. There's been like a miniseries. I think
this has like this guy Ken Burns written all over it. That guy's got to be kind of starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel at this point. Like Ken Burns cranks them out. The other nice thing is, like I don't want to cast aspersions, but sometimes the people that invent these incredibly important things is like, okay, it's like the Bill Burr joke about Steve Jobs where he's like, okay, wait, sounds like he might have been kind of an asshole. So that's what's also cool is that this guy is the real deal at home.
He was
as
teaching the skill, as a retiree.
With the same spouse. Everybody describes him as noble, dignified,
super
blah,
patriotic,
blah, blah.
like, a part of his veterans group.
Wow.
So a superhero.
He's a genius. I'm going to call him an American genius and pioneer.
Yeah, so it's super fun to read about him because it was one of those things where you're like, no. And then it's like, what? No. Like he's part of so much history, like directly. He fought in the Civil War. He was impacted by Dred Scott. His parents were runaway slaves. And what did he do? Oh, it's incredible. Like, when you stop and think about it.
The poetry sucked. I will say that.
I will say he could have taken a bit more time in editing, because like once it's a rhyme, it's like Latimer.
It's just kind of sing-songy and they're like the exact word, you would think like moon and noon. Like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like his patent. It's like, how come people don't like air conditioners? They love air conditioners, Latimer. They just don't want to get killed. And yours has DDT sprayed to disinfect. That clearly will kill us all. But cool invention, right? Better than what we have now. Marginally, if the windows are open, maybe it's a little weird, but it's a great drawing, and his descriptions are awesome.
I mean, that's the life of the inventor, right? Like, you invent a million things; they're not all going to be sliced bread. You know what I mean?
Right. Anyways, that is the story of Lewis Howard Latimer. I was super excited to tell you about it because, again, a theme of this season, and you've done a great job on all of your bios because I could say it about every one of our bios. How do we not know about these people?
This is our wheelhouse. This is rectifying a major hole in most of our knowledge. I know earlier you didn't let me give a numerical rating to Cleopatra, but I would give her... No, I would give your choice of Latimer. That's a 10. In this past season, we did 12 episodes. I would give just, and we'll leave it at this. You don't have to go into whatever.
We're not going to make it a competition.
No, but I was going to say,
I could say the same about every single one.
That the two that stand out for me as somebody I just had never heard a single thing about, Margaret Rudkin and Lewis Latimer. Lewis Howard Latimer.
Yeah.
That, and now I'll know their names forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, I feel I could say the same thing about Shirley Chisholm, for example. How did I
told you
not
to
know
do this.
about the first African-American woman to be elected to Congress? That's like, it's like knowing the states. Like, how do you not know these milestone events?
You know, we're always striving. We're always trying to get better, learn more. There's a little bit of suspense. Normally at this point, you ask me, can I tease my next episode? People got to wait and see. You know, we'll be entering season 5 of the Killer Pod, the Killer family of podcasts.
And not too late for them to email in? What's our address?
Thank you for mentioning it. killershipwrecks@gmail.com. killershipwrecks@gmail.com. Also, if you want a few golf balls that say Killer Shipwrecks on the side, first 5 people who email in and throw in your home address, we'll send you 3 nice, brand new, unused golf balls. So when we next talk, we will be at the very beginning of season 5 of Killer ...
The next Killer series. Could be a repeat of Killer Biographies. Could be something different. All right, so let's play our outro music for one last time this season. Colonel Troyer, outstanding season. Appreciate all of your stories. Look forward to the next Killer series.
Right back at you, partner.
Brainstorm.